Hi everyone, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and today I've got a tank review for you on this. It is the Rambo. It's the upcoming collaboration special battle pass where you can get yourself a tier 9 premium American heavy tank, which is quite similar to the M103, but you're going to get it with the fancy Rambo style, and unlike the M103, this thing is a full-blooded premium tank, so you will be able to get your hands on a big credit and bond maker. However, with so many tier 9 premium tanks in the game now, it's got to be good for it to justify your purchase, right? So I'm going to be comparing the Rambo, which in the game files currently is still called the M103M, to the tech tree M103, and also to, I'd say, a close rival in the form of the Chieftain prototype. So immediately we notice that the Rambo has great damage per minute. 2,602 is absolutely amazing for a tier 9 premium tank. However, to achieve this, it loses alpha damage compared to the other two tanks in this comparison. It has 360 alpha damage, while the M103 and the Chieftain have 400. It also has a 110mm caliber gun, which doesn't really mean too much with regards to the difference in all of these tanks overmatching their targets. The M103M has APCR as standard with 258mm of penetration and great shell velocity at 1,250. However, I would rather have AP shells with the same amount of pen on the M103, although you will lose some shell velocity there. That is because, remember, armor-piercing shells have 5 degrees of normalization, whereas your APCR rounds have only got 2, meaning against angled surfaces, the standard pen of the M103 is a good amount better. The Chieftain prototype has APCR shells as well, with a slight better bit of pen. Now, the M103M, unlike the Chieftain prototype, has heat as its premium rounds with 320mm of pen. That's really good. However, it's not nearly as good as the tech tree M103M, which gets 340. And against some super heavies like the buffed E100 cheeks, yeah, the 320 can struggle a lot more than that 340 amazing heat pen that the M103 gets. And honestly, I'd rather have 310 APCR like on the Chieftain prototype, unless you need to go through surfaces which are angled at more than 70 degrees. A passing mention should also be made to the high explosive rounds of this tank. 460 alpha damage is not bad, but 53mm of pen is worse than the M103's 60mm of pen. So basically, you sacrifice firepower and alpha damage to be able to gain that tremendous rate of fire. But remember, that means that you're going to be worse at trading unless you're in an all-in engagement. Gun handling wise, the M103M has been substantially nerfed since the previous patch. Now, its aim time is not special for this caliber of gun at 2.2. Now, it's not bad for 110, but only just a little bit better than the M103. I'd probably rather have that gun, considering the extra alpha damage. The accuracy is worse than the other two tanks in this comparison, even though it has worse alpha. And the gun handling on this tank it's really bad. That's all there is to say. 0.22 when moving, 0.22 when turning the tank, and 0.1 when turning the turret gets absolutely destroyed by the M103, which has 0.16, 0.16, and 0.06. To put that into perspective, you'd have to use 2 sets of vertical stabilizers on the M103M, aka the Rambo, to get the same gun handling that the M103 has. So on the M103, you could just not use vert stabs and use a turbo instead, and even if the M103M, aka the Rambo, uses vert stabs, you're still going to have better gun handling than it. Now, this wouldn't be such a big deal if it wasn't for this alpha damage disadvantage, and it really does feel that to make this damage per minute and the low alpha work, you just have to be either sitting still or very slowly creeping after your opponents and just not letting them leave your sight to be able to keep that tremendous damage per minute going. And it ends up with you losing a lot of hit points in the process. Gun depression wise, the vehicle's got 8 degrees, which is good, but not nearly as good as the Chieftain prototype. And so all in all, firepower wise and gun handling wise, it's not bad news for the M103M, but I'd rather be playing an M103. So now let's move on to the mobility. 34 forwards, 12 backwards, the same as the M103. Worse than the Chieftain in that regard. The power to weight ratio is 16.3, just a touch better than the M103. But that's probably just because of the weight difference that for some reason this tank has, I guess because of the caliber of the gun. The Chieftain prototype is fairly comparable to these two tanks in this regard, but faster forwards and faster backwards, which does help out. Armor-wise, this tank has an identical armor layout to the M103, but interestingly, a stronger engine, but a weaker ammo rack. Armor-wise, the M103M, it's not bad. The lower plate is not great. It will be penned by all vehicles that this tank can meet apart from tier 7s, but the turret armor is pretty good, especially if you're using your gun depression. It's got a decent turret on this tank, and you can pretty much expose it against everything. Just watch out for that turret ring. The real problem that this vehicle has is the rear lower part of the vehicle. We can see that it's only 44 millimeters thick, which means that you're going to get overmatched by 150 millimeter guns. And trust me, there are a lot of XM57s about, which makes side-scraping against them fairly awkward. The other problem this tank has is that weak point on top. If you're not using your gun depression, it's a heavy crown on top of the M103's head. But all in all, it's a solid tank as long as you keep frontal to your opponents, because look what happens as soon as they get your side. This is a very juicy target from the side. And one of the most annoying thing about this tank is just how much that turret sticks out if you come around a corner and want to aim at someone. And quite often you can get hit at times which you didn't expect it. And honestly, I'd rather be playing a Chieftain prototype. I'd rather have a horrible lower plate, but just be able to hide it on a ridgeline with better gun depression and have a tremendous turret to work with. Crew-wise, this vehicle is identical to the M103, which is not good news if you like top-tier American heavies. Because unlike the T57 heavy, the M5Y, or the T110E5, you're going to need an extra loader in the M103M, so take it from maybe one of your other American heavies like a T29. Crew skills-wise, I would recommend using Brothers-in-Arms, Repairs, Emergency Recon, Coordination and Practicality on your commander for his radio operator roles. Situational awareness, side-by-side and firefighting work wonders on this tank. For your gunner, I would recommend Brothers-in-Arms, Repairs, Snapshot to improve that relatively poor gun handling. Deadeye, Designated Target, and Armorer will be great on this tank. For your driver, Brothers, Repairs, Clutch Braking, Smooth Ride, Off-Road Driving, and Engineer. You could maybe drop Clutch Braking to take Controlled Impact on this tank if you really like to ram your opponents, but this vehicle, it's not that fast and it's not that heavy. For both of your loaders, I would recommend Brothers, Repairs, Safe Stowage, as this thing loves to get ammo racked, Intuition so you can make good use of the APCR and the heat difference, ammo tuning, and then it's your choice. If you want the shell velocity, go for it. Otherwise, I'd probably take Adrenaline Rush over close quarters combat on this tank, as it doesn't feel like it's a vehicle that's brawling. It feels like it's a vehicle that's working a ridge, and I think I'll get more value out of Adrenaline Rush, because this thing has a lot of hit points. Equipment-wise on this tank, I would recommend two builds. One would be Vent, Gun Rammer, and Vert Stabs, because this thing has horrible gun handling, and because of that low alpha and great rate of fire, you must try and keep that gun on the target. For my second build on this tank, I'm going to be dropping the Vert Stabs for a turbo for maps where I just have to drive a lot. Now, this makes the gun handling horrible on this tank and really takes away from what the vehicle is special for, and that is grinding your opponents out with high damage per minute. And I really wish that I could use 3 builds on this tank so I could take a durability as well. But alas, that is the issue with poor gun handling vehicles. For field mods, I would recommend all-terrain suspension, the accuracy, taking the view range increase. I'd take the firepower slot to be able to improve your gun rammer along with the vents, and also I'd take the reverse speed here. But I think that's quite enough jibber jabber. Let's go see how this vehicle performs as hopefully a one-man army on the battlefield. All right, so firstly we're going to be rolling out on Overlord, and let me clarify, if you've noticed my ping in the top corner, I am playing on the Asia server, boys and girls. The only way to be able to test this thing early in its buffed form was the Asia server, as the Asia server got the 1.27.1 patch a little early. So accordingly, you might see some of the new British double barrel heavies, and you might notice that when we fight, I don't know, Type 71, or if we fight an M5Y, that they're going to be a little bit better. So the build that I'm going to be using first is going to be Vents with a gun rammer and Vert Stabs on this tank, and you'll notice that even with the Vert Stabs, oh man, this tank's gun is whiffy, which is so frustrating thinking how good the damage per minute is on this tank. So, playing on the Asia server with 200 ping definitely means that we're going to miss a few more shots than we probably would do, and feel like we have to aim for a little bit longer. My heart goes out to everyone out there who has to play with 200 ping naturally, although, you know, it's spiking up to 300 there with a bit of red packet loss, and seeing the tanks doing little jiggles here and there, man, it's awkward. Do any of you out there actually have to just play constantly with 200 ping? Guys, I can't believe it. I guess if it's something that you get used to, it will be playable, but man, the amount of times that I just missed shots, or my shells just seem to just go through the targets with 200 ping, disgusting. Reminds me of playing 56k back in the day, and kind of like Counter-Strike 1.5 and everything when I was a kid, I guess, or a youth now. Way to date yourself, Uncle QuickyBaby. Yes, yes. I digress. Let me focus back on the tank. So this vehicle, it received some very significant nerfs from on the 1.27.1 test server. Wargaming made its accuracy worse, they made its aim time worse, and they nuked the vehicle's gun handling. It's in a very weird state now. The M103 is a vehicle that's right in the middle of the pack with regards to how good it is. It's not incredible, it's not awful. It's a strong tank, the M103. I would consider it to be right baseline, good, average, perfect kind of balance on that vehicle with regards to its win rate and its win rate difference. So for Wargaming to release an M103M and to not change too many of the statistics, but just a few of them, that's really our baseline for how good this vehicle is going to be. However, what I want to show you in today's video is just how important gun handling is on vehicles that have good rates of fire. Like this, the M103M. It fires a lot, but it's oh so frustrating to have to sit here with this mediocre gun handling and just lose pretty much everything that feels special about the M103. When everybody thinks about M103, I think about great rate of fire, nice punchy gun, good gun handling, and great gold rounds that could make even the heaviest of vehicle cry inside the game. The M103M, on the other hand, it has a very good rate of fire, it has better DPM than the M103, but it doesn't have heat rounds that would make every single heavy tank cry inside World of Tanks. And this gun handling means that you're just aiming for longer, much longer than you would do in an M103, and then you're hitting for 360 rather than 400. Now, this doesn't matter if, obviously, your opponents are exposing themselves to you the whole time and you get to just trade your hit points. But oh my word, there were so many incredibly awkward, annoying moments for the M103M where I just had to trade 1-for-1 with tanks. Tanks don't usually just sit there and allow you to shoot multiple shots at them, right? A lot of the time in World of Tanks, it's you fire 1-for-1 and then you readdress the situation, right? And this tank felt really quite mediocre, even when I played against inexperienced players, and I felt like I was playing well. This tank just didn't do the business for me. It didn't really work in that kind of a situation. You have worse pen on your standard rounds because of the normalization unless you're shooting flat targets than the M103. You have 20 millimeters less on your heat, and you've got worse HE as well. All of these add up, and then the gun handling just detracts from this tank so much that it no longer feels as if it's an M103. And that's not a good thing, because I think the M103 is a good tank. It's a good tank. If you can't play the M103, it's because you can't make use of that gun. You don't know how to shoot, you don't know how to work the different kinds of rounds of penetration against your opponents. The M103 is, objectively, a decent vehicle inside the game. So for the M103M, aka the Rambo, to come along and to kind of sacrifice so many of the things that makes the M103 the M103, what are we left with? What are we left with on this tank? You've lost penetration across the board, you've lost alpha damage, your gun handling is kind of 2 vertical stabilizers worse. Ridiculous, it's absolutely crazy. You know, that turret traverse dispersion at 0.1, it's 0.06 on the M103, meaning the M103 never has to use vert stabs within that regard. The movement dispersion on this tank is bad enough so that I would consider always taking vert stabs. And the games where I dropped the vert stabs on this tank and took a turbo, I felt like I was just having to drive the vehicle so slowly to be able to make use of the rate of fire that I never felt as if the vehicle was enjoyable within that regard. One of the very interesting things about the meta on the Asia server is, boy, is it slower. If any of you want to see what World of Tanks kind of felt like about 4 years ago, go play some rounds on the Asia server. I'm not going to make a comment about whether people play better or worse. I only played on it for a couple of hours, so it's not fair of me to kind of like judge an entire server after playing a vehicle that maybe some people don't know what it is on a server that I don't play very often, right? One thing I will say is that the games are a lot slower. People are far more happy to just sit in a position and just take opportunistic shots rather than to try and push the tempo. Snowballs still happen on the Asia server, sure, they definitely do, and people are still able to make bold and aggressive plays, but it does feel like the server is a lot more chill. And that kind of didn't really favor the Rambo with how I was playing it. I think this is a tank that wants some chaos. Oh, a bit of an unfortunate moment there. I could have shot on the guy's upper hull. If I was firing heat, I probably could have fired down on his upper hull armor there as well. And I don't quite manage to catch that T-26E5. I have to admit, this 200 millimeters of ping, it's definitely making me feel less confident and probably wanting to dip a little bit more into the heat rounds. Talking about ammunition costs on this vehicle, Wargaming, fair play to them, they have actually reduced the cost of the standard rounds just a little bit. It's down to 856, which means that your ammo cost shouldn't be too much on this tank. But trust me, when you start spamming the gold rounds, which are full price on this tank, oh, yeah, it can start to really add up. Because the M103 adds up, and the M103 with its extra 40 alpha damage and its 340 millimeters of gold pen gets the job done a lot better than quite often whiffing your shells on the M103M, aka the Rambo. So far in this battle, we've just done okay, man. We've just done okay. What I want to highlight of this vehicle is that how the DPM doesn't sometimes seem to really matter. But maybe now it finally is. Is this our first chance to actually fire 2 shots in a row? Everything so far in this battle, I really think that the M103 would have been better. It would have had the better pen, it would have had the better alpha, been way more consistent. However, now we've started to get to that stage where maybe the M103M can actually start to flourish a little bit with multiple shots against our opponents. Come there, get above the Progetto 66, finish him off, and now even if we whiff a shot right now, it's not the biggest of deals. We reload quickly and hopefully we can come down and get a little bit of a Patriot. So this game, I thought it was important for the review because it shows that you can't always use damage per minute. Damage per minute is only a good stat if you're able to catch an opponent and to keep pumping rounds. And that this vehicle, it doesn't feel at all like an M103 because of that lack of gun handling, the 40 less alpha, and the fact that its penetration across the board is worse on all 3 of its rounds, apart from, I guess, having better shell velocity on the APCR. So let's roll out once again on Ghost Town. Don't need a turbo on this map, so I'm going to be using those vert stabs. Oh, I'm not sure if I'm going to show you a game today where I drop the vert stabs. Most of those battles in the M103 where I tried to play with a turbo, oh man, yeah, pretty awkward with regards to the gun handling on this tank. Some people might go as far as to, I guess, drop the vents. But if you're dropping the vents, then you're losing so much of what makes this tank special with the intuition switching, so that you can be able to use the right round for the right job, just the damage per minute increase you're going to get, the aim time improvement, the accuracy improvement, all of those other aspects. Hey, nice shell velocity there to be able to get the FV4005. Just, you kind of feel as if you're annoying a bear, right? In the form of the FV405. It's probably one of the last tanks that you want to not come after you, right? Or it's probably one of the last tanks that you want to come after you, is what I'm trying to suggest. So right now I'm just trying to bait this tortoise. I'm going to switch across to heat and try and find the weak point on top of the vehicle. Fortunately, the shell whiffs, even with those vert stabs, and the tortoise manages to find the angle to be able to penetrate me. What was that? Just through the lower plate? I can't even see where the guy managed to catch me there. Yeah, I can't see the penetration angle at all. Oh, maybe it's just in the lower plate. You know what we can do? We can go free cam and have a little look around. Did he catch me there? Right behind the wheel? I literally can't see where this tortoise has managed to get me unless I'm blind. Anyway, on with the show. So in this kind of a situation, it's a bit weird because I'm going to get a great shot here into the tortoise. I was thinking, I'll just do like a rolling retreat and force him to come at me. And, oh, that one deviates a little bit so we don't manage to get the shot in. And then now we're in a scenario where I'm like, oh, I've kind of got myself into a checkmate situation here. I can't fire through this box with my heat for the lower plate. I guess I could try and YOLO there, but he's going to be able to farm me in this situation. So, nah, mate. Not today. Maybe later on in this game, Mr. Tortoise. I kind of realize now that I should probably just have the corner where at least then I can try and bounce him and control and get a shot into his weak point or a shot onto the right-hand side of his vehicle. But in that situation, that tortoise is going to absolutely smash me. So no thank you. So instead, I'm going to switch out my shells, fall back here, and see if we can be able to get an angle on something in the center. And whoa, it's a conceiver! This is the new Tier 8 British double, and this is where this thing just does well. But also, I'd like to highlight, you see that horrible side. Actually, it looks like the Conqueror actually caught me from over-angling in the hull. It wasn't in the side of the turret. But man, when you get going like this thing feels great. Gun rammer, vents, premium consumable, brothers in arms, high DPM. Man, this thing gets the job done in this kind of a situation. And this conceiver is being ruined right now. But was that the track or was that the hull again? Looks like, yeah, he maybe just caught my hull one more time, with the tortoise actually finding an angle at the back. Sneaky tortoise. I didn't like that very much. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to ask for the T-57 to help me out, and then I'm going to wait till I'm no longer spotted. And I feel like I should have the opportunity to flank this tortoise, but I'm just baiting round the corner here in case there's an FV4005. That vehicle that I hit earlier is definitely going to want to punish me now. Okay, so I'm switching to an APCR round because I want to be able to track the tortoise or be able to just get a clean shot from behind. The APCR will be better than the heat, and hopefully we can get 2 shots in before this guy turns around. And so this is where the Rambo's actually better. If I was in an M103, I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have been able to get the second shot in so cleanly for him to turn around. So advantage, Rambo. The only situation where this vehicle is going to just be clear better than an M103. And then is this tortoise really going to just crest the corner? I guess he's had enough. He is a dangerous tank, but he's not dangerous when he's in the garage. That's for sure. So the tortoise shut down, and I'm really happy with the way that I fought that tortoise. You know, we got a couple of easy opportunity shots on him, and then we went away from doing a stupid trading engagement where I've got DPM, but he's got the mega DPM and the better alpha. And then managed to flank them and shut them down. So good stuff there. And this is really where the Rambo just gets going. Right. And when it does get going, this tank, it definitely gets going. But what I want to highlight is, does this tank get going enough to justify losing what makes the M103 great? That's what I question with this vehicle. Are the situations where you have that tremendous rate of fire and that great damage per minute going to outweigh having the consistency on your gun? Are they going to outweigh having the extra pen, the extra alpha, all of these aspects that make the M103 special? And that's the kind of conclusion that I'm trying to come to in my head. At the end of the day, only you're going to really be able to make that decision for yourself, and whether this vehicle is going to be worth it. Thanks for that, GW100, just as I was getting around the map and really going to town here on Ghost Town. Looks like they still play artillery on the Asia server as well. And when this tank does get going, it absolutely slaps. We're top on damage here, top on experience, ace tanker for this vehicle, and even after resupplying our consumable at full price, we make 50,000 credits profit, and we get bonds to boot. But are those situations where the M103M gets to farm worth then sacrificing all of the other aspects of the vehicle? Would I rather play a Chieftain prototype? Okay, so if I can't go hull down, I'd probably rather play the M103M rather than a Chieftain prototype, because this vehicle has better side scraping and it's able to really start to get going with the damage per minute. However, if I can go hull down, I would definitely rather play a Chieftain prototype than this tank. And the Chieftain prototype feels way more competitive than an M103M within that regard. What I'm going to show you here is another situation where the M103M has to deal with tier 10 tanks, and where the gun performance is just not suitable for having to deal with real tier 10 tanks, especially E100 turrets now. So a lot of you might not know, but in the patch 1.27.1, which the Asia server already has, and which the EU server will have on Wednesday, tomorrow, the E100 turret is having its penetration, its armor buffed on its turret by 10 millimeters. And this makes a huge difference for the likelihood of your shells to be able to penetrate the E100's turret. Now, it's not so much of a problem for something with 340 millimeters of heat penetration like an M103. However, I can tell you for the M103M, with its 320 millimeters of pen, you now have to try and aim for those weak points on top of the E100, and not just try and butcher your way through its turret. Now, in this kind of a situation, when we're on like a flat surface, I'm still probably going to be able to get through the E100's turret maybe about 50% of the time or less if I get a good pen roll. Probably a little bit less than that. Maybe it's more like a third now. However, this tank, it just feels so much worse than if you're playing the M103. And I don't feel like it's that enjoyable for these kind of situations. I feel like now I have to spam a lot of gold to play against tanks that just have better alpha damage than me. The E100 literally has twice my alpha. The E75, 50% more than my alpha. So when I'm in situations like this, where my opponents will only expose themselves when they're loaded, and thus they're dangerous, 360 alpha damage on this vehicle with 320 millimeters of heat pen just doesn't feel like it has the firepower to truly instill fear in my opponent and also to get the job done. So for every game like you saw on Ghost Town, where I was fortunate that I managed to make a flanking play or really just have somebody drive out sideways in front of me and then chase down the tortoise and chase down some damage at the end of the game, I had so many scenarios like this where I'm just playing against tanks that I can't really deal with. That is the issue. I'm playing against tanks that I just can't deal with a gun which is just subpar for what I need it to do to be able to win these situations. And I truly wish I was playing the M103 for this kind of an engagement. So all in all, I want to come to a conclusion about this tank. Do I think it's absolutely horrendous, terrible? No, I don't think it's horrendous and it's terrible. I don't think it's good. I think it's worse than an M103. And we saw that the M103 doesn't have the best performance either. Now, of course, a lot of people will be playing the M103 when it's stock, so we need to take that into account when we take a look at win ratio difference on tanks, on services like Tomato GG. But I can't see this thing getting a very good win rate, because the situations where you get to really farm, I feel like the M103, which has 90% as good farming capacity as this, will have had good enough farm anyway. However, there will be scenarios where you're trying to deal with the cheeks of an E100, or where you're just getting to trade 1 for 1, where this vehicle just feels like it's a very bad M103. So that is my conclusion on the Rambo, aka the M103M. It doesn't feel like it has an enjoyable playstyle. I would honestly rather play the Tech Tree M103. And the fact that this vehicle is so similar, but it has enough nuances that mean that it's definitely... Oh, look at that. 320 should not bounce off an E100's cheeks when they're just pointing straight towards you. It has enough of these aspects about this tank that are just not good enough that it frustrates me. And I quite often found myself trying as hard as I possibly could, spamming as much gold as I possibly could, to have results like this. I would have definitely done better in a chieftain prototype in this scenario. I think I would have done better in an M103 in this scenario as well. I don't think that this vehicle is a very good tier 9 premium. It's definitely not going to be overpowered. There's no way that this tank could possibly be overpowered. Is it going to be useless? No, it's not going to be useless. But I definitely think it's a tank that will prefer good matchmaking. Well played to the E100 on the enemy team for the heat round to the top of my turret, and then finishing me off with HE. So to conclude, when we take a look at the win ratio difference of every single tier 9 heavy inside World of Tanks, we see the M103 is wham bam right here in the middle. And we see the chieftain prototype is towards more the lower of the middle pack along with the Toro. And I personally think that this is where the M103 is going to end up as well. I don't think it's as good as an E77. I don't think it's as good as a Tiger Mouse as well for quite a lot of situations. And it's not nearly as good as an Object 752. So if you're going to play World of Tanks a lot to be able to get the Battle Pass done, is it worth 3,500 gold if that's what the price tag is going to be from Wargaming? Then yes, I do think it's worth 3,500 gold if you don't already have a 752 and if you don't have a Chieftain prototype or if you don't have an E77. However, is it going to be worth grinding your butt off over the next couple of weeks to be able to complete the Battle Pass to have the privilege to purchase the M103M, aka the Rambo? No, I don't think it is. I think there are better tanks to get your hands on And I think that the M103, the classic Tier 9 American heavy tank, which was featured in my first ever YouTube video in 2012, is still the more fun vehicle to play. Anyway, ladies and gents, boys and girls, that was it for my full tank review on the Rambo. Really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you hated it, give it a thumbs down. And let me know what you think about the Rambo in the comments down below. Do you think that the looks are enough to make you want the vehicle? Or do you think this is just another Tier 9 heavy tank that you're going to be skipping out on? And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.